Hello, I'm Hywel from Musica Viva, Australia. Welcome to season 2022. I'm on Gadigal land and I pay my respects to the traditional owners of these lands and to their elders past, present and emerging. We are beyond delighted to be able to bring you a full year of live music around Australia with such a wonderful collection of artists who will travel here from all over the world and also be with us already here as some of Australia's leading musicians. In just a moment, you'll see the first of two videos in this special presentation. We've asked some of the artists who are appearing with us next year some questions about the season, about Musica Viva, and about Australia. You might quite enjoy some of their answers. You can also pause at any time and go and visit our digital brochure at musicaviva.net.au. After this, we'll be back, Paul Kildea and I, to talk in some more depth about next year's performances, and we look forward to seeing you in the concert hall next year. Thanks.
My name is Avia Vital. I play the mandolin.
Hi, my name is Esther Yu. I'm a violinist and I'm part of the Zen Trio.
I'm Zoe Narton. I'm the cellist from the Flinders Quartet.
Hi, I'm Karen Shelp. I'm a classical guitarist.
My name is Julia Fredersdorf and I am a Baroque violinist.
Christian Winter and I play the violin.
Andrea Lamb, I play the piano.
Paul Grabowski, I'm a pianist.
Hyrapet Arakelian, and I'm the alto saxophone player from the Signum Saxophone Quartet.
The most meaningful Musica Viva moment was hearing a concert from this year with Sophie Rowell and the Annam Orchestra and Constantine Chamray and Harry Ward. That concert just hit on every level. The music, it was so powerful itself. The orchestra, just to see and hear this amazing talent and the community of it all. And Sophie is just such a gorgeous player and leader. It was one of those few concerts that I cried in because it meant so much.
I think that would have to be the first time that we played for Musica Viva many, many, many years ago. And it was the first time that we met the Goldner Quartet. And we were playing in the Yarra Valley in a festival. And we had the privilege of playing the Mendelssohn Octet. And I remember that Ian Munro was comparing the concert, and I distinctly remember just being swept away by the sound of the Golden Quartet, their energy, their musical intelligence. And at the end of that day, it was so exhilarating. And I remember thinking, okay, this is it. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Of course, there are so many memories and great memories along the way because we traveled through the country and I've seen so many places on that tour that I haven't seen before. New cities for me, new places, and it was very dynamic for that reason. But also I remember Melbourne. I mean, we're with a string quartet and we were all very kind of foodies. And I just remember going to Melbourne and kind of calculating, okay, we have like 3 lunches and 2 dinners in Melbourne. And everyone came with their recommendations.
The commission by Matt Lang is a brand new piece for us. We'll be premiering it, I guess, on the tour, so we're really looking forward to that.
The piece of Kurt Weill, the concerto of Kurt Weill for violin, is a piece we never played before. And this is a very, very interesting piece, and we are extremely excited to try it out. And this will be the premiere in Australia. And the music of Kurt Weill is very deep, very interesting for us. We never had the chance to perform it, but different recordings which we have heard, and also the scores which we got of the arrangements are looking very, very promising.
I had a dream to play with Giovanni Sollima. We played already several concerts. Specifically, one of his pieces called Federico II. Which I love playing, and I really wanted to play with him. It's for quartet, and I kind of, in this arrangement, I kind of play the first violin part, and Giovanni plays all the other 3 parts in one cello. And this is exactly the things that Giovanni Sollima can do on the cello.
my piano, I guess, which is right behind me. I don't know if you can see it there, but there it is. My Bösendorfer.
I would find it hard to live without a cello, I think.
Obviously, a lot of people have been spending a lot of time at home this year, and it's really been fantastic it's silly to say, of course, but to have a violin and to have something to play and to improve on. And I have a new violin as well at the moment, so I'm getting to know that, and it's actually been really nice to have some time to get to know it before I take it out and start playing concerts with it.
Ooh, well, goes without saying that I'll be trying to go to all of the concerts, because one of the things that I love about Musica Viva is the diversity with which they program. And in a way, I don't even need to know who's going to be playing. I just know that somebody has curated, and that somebody being Paul Kildea, has curated the most luscious, stimulating program. But that said, what I'm particularly looking forward to next year, Paul Grabowski is somebody who always captures my imagination. I love listening to where he takes a musical thread, and I think that connection with Paul and Andrea Lamb is one I'm really looking forward to, because I have no kind of idea about what I'm in for, and that for me is always really exciting.
There are a lot of very, very great artists in the season. If I could pick up one or two, I think I'll pick up two, and this would be the Zen Trio, simply because I know the cellist of the trio very well, the Narek Akhnazarian, who is also Armenian as me, and we have played together as we were young children. And the other artist is the Avia Vital and Giovanni Solima. Avia Vital is an artist with whom we have also played in the past, and Giovanni Solima, the cellist and composer, is a person whose music we love very much. We have played a piece by him, and it would be really an amazing experience to visit these two musicians playing together on a concert.
You know, I'm just super excited about this tour because I am actually ticking off a bucket list item with this tour by getting Carl Vine, who is one of my favorite composers, to write for the first time for the guitar. And he's writing a piece for myself and Flinders Quartet to premiere, sponsored by some amazing people in memory of their wonderful daughter.
My bucket list is sort of open-ended in terms of I just have a list of stuff that I really, really want to play, and I try and make it happen sometime, as soon as I can, because obviously, we don't know if we'll be here forever. And so I have a lot of quartets that I want to play, and a few concertos. And in terms of non-musical stuff, I'm trying to run as much as I can and get better at chess.
The Bach Goldberg variations have always been on my bucket list. I remember just listening to recordings of it over the years and just thinking, I would like to learn this piece one day, maybe when I'm old and retired and just have a whole bunch of time to sit down and learn this. And earlier last year, I was thinking, when would I have time to learn these pieces? So this is actually way up on my bucket list. The fact that I get to explore this piece, it's insane. It's a whole universe, and it's a whole obsessive place to be that is actually a real relief to explore in lockdown, because it's just such good company. It's so challenging and so rich and so emotional and so perfect, like in its structure and architecture. It's like the best logic puzzles ever in this very emotional package that just is perfect. So this is actually, the Goldberg variations are on my bucket list.
We are touring Australia for the first time in summer 2022. The commission piece we are really looking forward to. It's the first time for our trio to be doing this kind of commission work, contemporary work together. So that's really exciting. And the two other works, both Babajanyan and Dvorak, are pieces that are very close to us. We have recorded them on 2 different albums. And so we're excited to bring all this repertoire to Australia.
The quirkiest piece that we will be playing is the Boccherini Fandango. This piece, and I hope it's not a spoiler alert, but this piece actually requires the cellist to multitask with castanets. And I've actually taught myself how to play castanets. Look, I wouldn't say properly, but I do actually get them onto my fingers, and I don't do the kind of the ones where you can just tap them. I actually do get them on my fingers. And so for me, it's always fun doing something new.
The Borderlands program that we're going to be presenting is it's a really exciting program. It's full of really great music from about a span of 200 years or so. But what's really interesting about it is the idea of borders, which has actually become a much more interesting subject these days. Who would have thought that borders would become so important in Australia? So I think it's going to be something that kind of resonates in that way, the idea of music from the extremities or from areas that don't necessarily have a sort of sitting around borders, and just also the extremes within one country or one area, the different kinds of climates that you can experience, and then how that affects the people. So our program it's a mixed bag, but it really illustrates the idea of border towns and different personalities through different climate.
And next year, I'll be doing something unusual for Musica Viva. I will be performing together with Andrea Lamb a concert in which she will play the Goldberg variations of Johann Sebastian Bach, and then I will improvise for about 45 minutes on the aria from the Goldberg variations. So it's variations on the variations, so to speak. Oh, our First Nations. So our First Nations who've been here for such a very, very, very long time, and have managed to live in harmony with the very difficult environments in which they have sometimes had to exist, depending on where they were in Australia, but extraordinary people, no doubt.
Before I visited Australia, it was the kangaroo. But after I've been to Australia once, first thing comes always to my mind is an endless, beautiful landscapes.
The super friendly people.
Sunshine, food, family, just really good weather.
I think about all of the cliches of deserts and kangaroos and beautiful coral reefs.
The sense of space and the space that you feel even in the sky.
First thing that comes to mind when I think of Australia is home. And that's very important to me because Australia is not my native home. I was born in Germany. I moved to Australia when I was 8. So I have a very deep kind of appreciation for everything that Australia is, everything that Australia has given me.
Can I choose both?
Easy. Tim Tam.
I think I've tried Vegemite and I'm not a huge fan. So I'll say Tim Tams, but I haven't tried Tim Tams yet.
Oh, probably Vegemite, but in very small amounts with lots of toast and lots of butter.
Vegemite, because I prefer salt to sugar.
Tim Tams and Vegemite. I think Tim Tams definitely I would have to keep them. Yes. I do like Vegemite, but sorry.
If I had to choose for a desert island, it would definitely be Tim Tams.
I would be a koala because I could sleep for most of the day. Sleep and eat for most of the day.
Kangaroo, for sure. And it looks like a fun thing to be.
I think a platypus. A platypus seems to be able to kind of exist in different different situations, keeps itself hard to find, is incredibly beautiful when you finally do see one in the wild. And yeah, for me is really the quintessential Australian animal.
Maybe a platypus. They get to hide a lot, they swim a lot, and they get to kind of roll around in mud, and everybody thinks they're very cute.
I think probably a kangaroo. I'd love to be one of those really giant western red kangaroos that can just bound. I mean, it must be almost like flying.
Kylie Minogue, I have to say, I have so much appreciation. I mean, growing up, I was a rebel. I was rock. So I couldn't hear anything that is pop. But this is so good. And I think, what was it? A couple of years ago, she made this amazing commercial to come to Australia. And I think I watched it like 20 times in loop.
I think if I have to choose one, then probably AC/DC. Yeah.
Definitely AC/DC.
Both. They're so different though. I mean, Kylie, I like both of them. I think AC/DC might be, like, from a musical perspective, maybe a little bit more intricate and interesting in like a complex manner.
Oh dear. Okay. I would say Kylie Minogue, but this one again is tricky because I have a 6-year-old boy who loves anything that's loud. So AC/DC gets played quite a lot. And it's actually pretty good. So again, I'm gonna have to go with both. These are difficult decisions to make.
Whoa, that's a hard one because I don't really, well, AC/DC probably, as far as a personality match.
Oh, that's easy. AC/DC. AC/DC played at my school dance in 1975. So I feel very attached to AC/DC.
Did anyone say Kylie Minogue?
False. They are marsupials.
Yeah, true.
False, definitely false. They are definitely not bears.
I'm gonna say false.
I'm going to say false.
False.
I think it's false. They look like a bear, but I think biologically they don't have a lot of common with bears. I think so. That's what I learned in the school, I remember.
Well, you're 100% right.
Yes.
Hello, Mr. Kildea in Melbourne.
Hello, Hywel, up in Sydney.
We seem to spend most of our life at the moment, like lots of people, on these Zoom calls, don't we really? It's lovely to be able to do it, but how good it'll be to be back live.
Oh, man, yeah. But the Zoom calls don't always have the charming films and conversations that we've just seen.
No, and what struck me about those conversations, which were, as you say, quite charming, was how much, at least for me, chamber music is about the people as much as it's about the repertoire and the performance, perhaps. But it is very interesting to see that breadth of personalities and different nationalities coming together on a stage. You know, it's interesting. We talk all the time, but I don't think I've ever asked you to talk a bit about how you approach putting together a whole collection of people and music like this. Where do you start? Could you talk about it?
Oh, yeah, sure. Look, you start with, I start with a simple idea and then deal with the ramifications of that simple idea. And the ramifications, as you know, are often far-reaching. And it was kind of interesting. As a good example, actually, was in the film. Esther from the wonderful Zen Trio, who's coming here to Australia next year for the first time. I'd first talked to her about the possibility, and the trio, the possibility of taking on a commission by the young composer Matt Lang. Now, those within the Musica Viva family know Matt very well because he joined our Future Makers scheme earlier this year. But it's a matter of the trio really liking Matt's aesthetic, Matt thinking that he had something to say with the piano trio and really liking their aesthetic, and then having one of those great arranged marriages. So that, for instance, is a starting point where you just think, we've got this great trio. Esther saying it's a real opportunity for them to work with a living composer, which is not a huge part of their repertory and their practice. And for that to be Matt, one of our future makers, seems to me just a wonderful idea. So that's what it is. You have that idea, what can we do? And then you have to kind of make it happen. And so that's how it happens. And if you then amplify that by 7 different concert tours, some with different programs, some with different marriages that you want to arrange, you start to see how a season starts to emerge. And then from that emergence, you have all the questions about balance, whether it be gender balance, whether it be audience balance, whether it be genre balance, whether it be instrument balance. So all of those things come into play.
So does that mean then, I can understand that you have an idea for a particular concert, let's say, or a particular tour. Does that mean that as things keep shifting, which we know that they do, even in whatever normal times are, they keep shifting, and in these times they've shifted even more, does that mean there's a kind of core guiding idea or principle for the whole of the season that you're trying always to think about or refer back to?
Yes. I can never think in isolation or in silos. So if we decide to do a particular project, say it's the Goldberg variations, which we're doing, it just means, okay, well, we don't then do another big piano program, or we don't do another jazz infused program, because actually what we're trying to do is keep the balance between individual tours. And then within those individual tours, keep an internal balance. So yeah, to me, it's really straightforward. And the problem with what we've been dealing with the last 18 months is that big projects that take a long time to get up and are complex and are more complex than smaller projects, then, you know, take up a lot of resources and timing and thinking. And what we've ended up doing is making sure that those big projects still see the light of day, but don't fall over, but perhaps get moved on to future seasons. So there's a lot of plate spinning. And the thing that sometimes concerns me is that we haven't forgot about a plate or let it fall. And, that seems to be, that's what my job is, to make sure that all those plates do keep spinning.
The sound of crashing crockery from the artistic office. It's probably just as well you're in Melbourne, actually, because we can't hear it happening up in Sydney. That's rather good. Talking of big projects makes me think of what I think of as a very significant project, next year, Winter's Journey. Would you talk about that, please, where it came from and how it came together?
Sure. I've been thinking about this piece, which is kind of an archetypal romantic journey and romantic milestone, because of course it would be in miles, and what that means in an Australian context. And so with that project, I first went, well, I want to work with Alan Clayton, a tenor who's a great friend, but also someone whom I admire hugely, and with whom I've collaborated a number of times, starting from bringing him to the Perth Festival when he was 20, and then doing various Britain projects with him and working with him in the Palestinian territories, and like lots of different things. And so of course I was going to bring him and find something for him at Musica Viva. Because he's a peerless performer, just a wonderful, wonderful spirit, about whom Neil Armfield, who is no slouch in terms of the people he's directed, the actors he's directed, says, Alan is quite frankly one of the best actors I've ever worked with, not, singer actors, but actors I've worked with. So I didn't tell Kate Blanchett. But anyway, it was trying to find him something really amazing. And then this idea of what Winterreise means, the winter's journey means in Australia, and how much Müller and Schubert in that cycle defined the German landscape and the German psyche in the 19th century. And I said, well, what's the equivalent in the 20th in Australia if we're going to perform it here. And I just went, well, Fred Williams for me was the person who completely defined the way that I viewed Australia growing up in the 60s and 70s, and the way many people came to view what Australia is and meant. And so I thought, what's the parallel? And then interestingly, in this beautiful brochure, there's a picture of the charcoal burner's hut. And of course, the charcoal burner's hut in Winterreise features as something that the wanderer finds on his journey. So I just went, okay, there are literal overlaps, there are metaphoric overlaps, and then there are real distances. And what happens if we put all them together? And then it was a short step from that to the wonderful videography of Dave Bergman, the beautiful direction of Lindy Hume, with whom Alan first performed his kind of breakout role, which was at Albert Herring at the Aldeburgh Festival, which I conducted and brought this team together. So it really was slightly, how do we get the band back together, and how do we make, as you say, a real flagship project for Musica Viva?
I'm also interested, given how much time you spent outside Australia, whether was this a project that was germinating whilst you were away, and how does the Australian winter feel to you now that you've been in other winters for a long time?
When I lived in Berlin, so I lived in Berlin for a long time, I used to laugh at the concept of the Australian winter. Now that I live back here and in Melbourne, there's no laughter anymore. Winter is a serious proposition. And when people in Queensland talk about it, I just go, you don't know what you're talking about. So there are lots of those kind of metaphors and realities that unfold. I think I often say this to, you know this, Hywel, better than anyone. We're blessed to work with really great colleagues at Musica Viva. But one of the things I often say to my artistic team is, if there's an idea that won't let go of me and I won't let go of it, it usually means there's merit in it. And this has been something, what does, at one point, our great colleague, Catherine Kemp, wrote a little bit of copy about this project. And she did say, what does Winterreise mean in the big brown land? And I thought that was her great summation of this thing that had been itching away at me for some years now. And to get this peerless team together to bring it to life seems to me just a wonderful opportunity and a great privilege and honour for Musica Viva, but also Musica Viva is the one driving this. It's thrilling to watch.
And I suppose the journey happens inside us as well. It talks about our own winters, wherever we are, whatever geography we're in. It touches on that aspect of our lives, I would suspect, as does Fred Williams' paintings. It'll be really quite remarkable to watch it on stage.
Yeah, it will be. And the idea of the metaphors of it, people popularly think that Winterreise is this gloomy piece, which it's just not. It really is about metaphorical and intellectual growth, and the idea of the wanderer, being, an enlightenment figure, encountering all these amazing thoughts, and the marriage between nature and thought, which is so strong in the cycle, means that it is open to being transplanted, if you like, into an Australian context. And working with Lynn Williams, the widow of Fred, on the selection of the images that will be animated and turned from tiny kernels into these beautiful images on stage has been a real privilege.
And I come from Wales, of course, which is a land of perpetual winter, so I can't wait for that particular tour. Just say a bit about the rest of the year. What would you like people to remember specifically? What would you like them to take away from the year as a whole when you think about the whole 12 months?
Yeah, well, you asked a little while ago about how a season gets put together. And when we've had conversations about, well, do we put out a full season? Do we put out just a little bit of a season because of the uncertainty? And we were both adamant that it was actually really important to try and put together a full season, because it's only through a full season that you can see a whole picture. So I want people to come on this journey, funnily enough, that takes us through different genres, different combinations, different co-productions, co-commissions, the idea that, which came across really strongly in that very beautiful collection of interviews with the visiting artists and the Australian artists, is when you ask them to name what they're looking forward to in the season, you know, you'll have Esther say, "I want to work. You know, I'm thrilled to be seeing and working with Matt Lang." You'll have Zoe saying, "Oh gosh, you know, I've always admired Paul Grabowski, so to be able to see that." You'll have, you know, Signum talking about the great artistry of Avi. You know, on it goes, and it's a real reminder that, you know, we are part of an international community of artists, and sometimes it can feel hard to remember that when we're so far away. But that's the one thing I want to take people to take out of the season, is that this is the real start of us maintaining and stepping up to our place on international stages, and whether it be through the co-productions with international festivals and halls in the future that are already in development and are already reaping such promising fruit, or whether it's just this amazing respect that people have for international artists and international artists for us, saying, yeah, I really want to work with that person, or I just would really love to go along to that concert. That's what I want. I want people to pick up on that energy that I think is really there in the programming, and certainly in the collaborations and respect that artists throughout the world feel for each other.
And as our audience will see, when the printed brochure, which we've produced this year, unlike last, when it arrives, it may be a little later than we'd like it to be in arriving with you, but you will receive one if you've asked for a printed version, or we'll see on the digital version of that online. We've chosen the metaphor of birds to demonstrate our eagerness to take flight with music again, to be live again with audiences around the country. Those pictures are really, in the brochure and online, are really quite beautiful pictures, and such a symbol, aren't they, really, of where we're going?
Yeah, look, the birds are there for metaphoric value. They're there just to make people feel happy, and they're there to celebrate the different art forms that this season in particular represents. Because Gary here is a very, very famous photographer, but these images of his are just so beautiful. It was a way of us saying, oh, well, at Musica Viva, we see these kind of collaborations between artists, writers, musicians, international co-productions. We see this as an important part of our future. So how do you make a statement about that? And in some senses, what we're doing is a manifesto. The brochure is a manifesto as much as just a season brochure. It's a way of just saying, look, this is how we see what it is we do and where we're going. And so it's been particularly over the last months and last 6 months, it's been a joyous proposition to say, how do we want to sell ourselves to our really valued audiences, to those people who have got behind projects in the past and in the present and in the future. It's just a way of saying, wow, this is a pretty exciting time for us, jump on board.
We, as you said, we talked a lot this year about whether we could produce a full season or whether we should produce a shorter selection of concerts. And in the end, we, and pretty quickly, realized that what we wanted to do was tell a full story, as you say. We want people to come on that full journey with us throughout the whole of the year. But I think the other reason we wanted to do that in this year in particular was because we wanted to tell more of the story of you and your vision as we go forward now into future years of music and words and art under your leadership. And there's some clues in this season, aren't there, about Paul Kildea's vision? Are there any particular ones you want to pick out, or should you just let the audience decide for themselves?
Oh, it's invidious, but look, there's a wonderful saxophone quartet coming at the end of the year, and we just got a hint of that in the video, and it was terrific because I've always loved the Kurt Weill violin concerto, and of course it's scored for violin solo and for wind band orchestra. And I just went, wow, it would be amazing to be able to perform that because we never hear it in Australia. And it means that the orchestration would work so well on a saxophone quartet. So all we need to do is convince them that this is a really good idea, and then commission an arrangement of it, which in this case we've done from the Sydney-based composer Jess Wells. And I think that I love that because it's a collaboration with Christian Winter, the Australian violinist, working with this amazing sax quartet. It's really astonishing. They do everything from memory. There's just, charismatic. It opens up immediately a different world. And so that to me is interesting because it says one thing, and we encountered this slightly this year when I programmed the piano concerto by Schnittke, but just sort of said, okay, this is still chamber music. If you don't have a conductor up there waving his stick, it means that the autonomy is given over to the players. And what do you produce from that? You produce chamber music, admittedly on a large scale, but it's chamber music. And that's what's going to happen with this performance of the violin concerto. It just seems to me it's a broadening of the definition of chamber music, but you can scratch your head for 20 minutes and you're still left saying, well, this is a chamber performance. And of course, I can't wait for the Van Diemen's Band program, which is second off the rank, if you like, in terms of our tours. That to me was a really exciting project. Julia Fredersdorf is just one of the most interesting minds. And as soon as you have a conversation with her, she'll suggest one thing, I'll suggest another thing. And then we go away and both go, man, that's just going to be so exciting. And in this instance, it's interrogating the idea of what happened at the borders of different countries in Europe in the 18th century and onwards, especially when borders were changing so quickly. And so what about the influences of one country on another, on the music, on the tastes, on the smells, on the food, on the books? That was something that was really amazing to bring back. It was great to see Avital on that video, getting the question about the koala bear wrong, I'm afraid. But it was great to see him just kind of talk with such affection about his previous tour in Australia and how much he looked forward to coming to Australia again. And the fact that we get to put him together with Giovanni Sollima, something that he'd wanted to do for a long time, but for us to have conversations about what that project should be and how both of them had a different view of the Mediterranean, because the fact that Avi grew up in Israel and Giovanni grows up in Sicily. And so how did that look? That they both have their own view of borderlands, if you like. So to have that happen was just a wonderful thing as well. And then the thrill of putting Karen Sharp together once more with the Flinders Quartet. They were together for a beautiful recording, which included the Boccherini Fandango that we're programming on this tour this year. But mostly it was because Karen had said to me a while ago, oh, if ever you see the opportunity to get a work out of Carl Vine for me and either solo or with string quartet, I'd love it. And so it was quite easy then when I thought about programming Karen and the Flinders of saying to Carl, well, how about a work for guitar, solo guitar and string quartet? And of course we have the premiere of that this year. And then if you add to that the Sydney Morning Masters series, which features some really interesting Australian performers in understood collaborations or in new collaborations with different commissions, including a piece by the First Nations composer Brenda Gifford for Vocal Detour, which is going to be a really wonderful exploration of her own poetry and sounds. You kind of think, wow, this is really a great series in Sydney. We've gone in a slightly different direction in Melbourne with a new series called Viva Edge, which is at the Edge in Federation Square, a slightly later time, and with also a different focus on what does chamber music mean in different contexts and in different communities. So that's going to grow over the years to come. If you put all of those together, I think you end up with a pretty well-rounded and interesting exploration of music in different cultures, and of course the core of what we do, which is the representation of the very best chamber music that the world can offer.
Paul, I can't wait to be back in a concert hall listening to this particular season of live music. Thank you for, with our colleagues, assembling it, putting it together, building this beautiful thing. And here's to season 2022.
Oh, here's to season 2022.